The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Today's question comes from two people. Two people in 2 weeks asked us this question, and it's been a while since we've done a Trekspert. Sorry about that, we've been busy, but we're back. And the two people asked us a very similar question. Freud Cigar, I love that name by the way, Freud Cigar, and Movie Man 6456, both of them asked us to do an episode about the Borg Queen and whether or not we think that the Borg Queen was a good idea. Whether the Borg Collective should have stayed just a collective consciousness, or if when they introduced the Borg Queen in First Contact it was a good idea. And then the second guy, Movie Man, Movie Man 6456, mentioned something interesting. He was in his question, he mentioned the fact that they did a flashback in First Contact back to Best of Both Worlds, inserting the Borg Queen in there, saying, oh no, she was there the whole time. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call it a retcon, but introducing continuity into something that was already there before it. Good idea, bad idea, so why don't you start?
Okay, I start. Bad idea. Just flat out.
Just overall, flat out?
I never liked the Borg Queen.
Okay.
I loved the introduction of the Borg, and actually I saw their introduction in order, I think. I saw first Q-Who, then I saw Best of Both Worlds, and then I saw...
Those of you that might be new to the show, keeping in mind that Sarah didn't start watching Star Trek while it was at all on the air. Sarah started watching Trek with stuff that I had, so you frequently watch stuff out of order.
Yeah, very much so, but for some reason I watch, the Borg progression, with the exception of Descent, which I think I saw much later than First Contact. I saw, Q-Who, Best of Both Worlds, and Iborg, and then I saw First Contact. And the Borg Queen just hit me out of left field. I didn't like the concept. I loved the idea of just this big mass, faceless mass. It was an idea for me that was much scarier than putting a face on it and saying, oh, that's our bad guy. Take that person out and you've destroyed the Borg.
Yeah, the Borg Queen is such a movie concept.
Yeah.
We're doing a film, we're doing a 2-hour movie, we need a protagonist and we need an antagonist. And I'm not going to go as far as to say that when they wrote that they thought that a general audience wouldn't understand the idea of the Borg, and so they felt like they must put a face on it. I'm not sure that's fair. I don't want to go that far. I don't really know what they were thinking.
I think they were thinking by that point that Star Trek films needed a supervillain.
Yeah,
I think that's all they were thinking.
Yeah, I think it was too. Because the first thing I thought was, well, maybe they think a general audience wouldn't get it. I'm not sure that's fair. But yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think that often the TNG films were trying to find Picard's con. And when Nemesis came out, that's actually what they said was before Nemesis came out, and back when I thought there was a chance it might be a good movie, they were saying I mean, sorry to people who like Nemesis, but that's them's the grapes, as it were. But anyway, they actually said the infamous the people who wrote the script, John Logan, was saying, well, I've come up with Picard's con, and I was like, ooh, Picard's con, and immediately it wasn't. I feel like they were trying that in nearly every movie with the exception of Insurrection, because Insurrection wasn't so much about the bad guy. It still had that big bad guy, but you had Soren in Generations, and then First Contact you had the Borg Queen, the big ominous, scary supervillain, who has these platitudes of, I am the collective, and the collective is me, and I'm not quoting directly, obviously, but she would say things that were extremely cryptic on purpose, and it was obvious that the writers hadn't thought through exactly what they meant, because it didn't matter. It was just...
Yeah, it was just supposed to be this big concept that they introduced so that they can have a villain. It doesn't need to make perfect sense because most of the people watching the movie don't watch the series.
Right, and because it is made for a general audience, and that's sort of kind of okay with me. Sort of, in the context of that movie. And the thing is, I am not so obsessed with the idea of continuity that I can't get over the idea that the continuity in the series makes sense in a way that perhaps it doesn't that sometimes films don't quite make sense into. They are kind of different formats, and so when you have something in a movie that doesn't quite mesh, it's not that big of a deal to me as long as the movie's really good. And then what you get into is, well, they take a movie concept and then they throw it into the series later.
Yeah. Which is a problem.
And that's when you get into kind of issues. If somehow or rather the Borg Queen had only ever appeared in First Contact, and Voyager had found a way to not use her,
yeah.
Well, it may not have worked for First Contact, but would it have been that big of a deal? Would people go, wait a minute, why did we never see the Borg Queen again? Because we didn't see her in Scorpion, Sarah. And Scorpion was our big introduction to the Borg in Voyager. And I just wonder if people would have really been all that upset about never seeing the Borg Queen again, at least those of us who really appreciated what the Borg originally were, because, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, and forgive me for saying it this way, but Scorpion gave us the best of both worlds. Scorpion gave us the Borg a little bit more like they were in TNG. It left out the Borg Queen. It conveniently didn't bring up the Borg Queen anywhere. As far as I remember, I don't think it brought her up anywhere. But it used those costumes from the movie and made them scarier looking. Because you have to admit, they at least looked really cool.
They did look cool. And I think it actually, thinking about it, I'd never thought about it that way, but if they had just put the Borg Queen in that one movie, where she was heading up this mission herself, and once they killed her, maybe she couldn't come back. I mean, what if they couldn't duplicate a clone type?
Yeah, I'm not sure people would have even really thought about the whole cloning or replicating or whatever, because they never come out and tell us, so we had to kind of guess anyway.
Yeah. So why did she come back? I mean, there are people who are wondering, well, didn't she die? I mean, why are we seeing her again? And
if you think about the three big places in Voyager we saw her, are they really that important? I mean, Dark Frontier was decent, and was kind of a big Borg Queen story. That was kind of the big thing. Unimatrix Zero, which I never liked, and then they kind of made, in a way, they made the Borg Queen Janeway's con by Endgame.
Yeah, which worked better than Picard's con, but
it was still lame in its own way. I mean, I like Endgame. Don't get me wrong, but I like it to a point, but there's just a lot about it that doesn't work. So ultimately, what was good about the Borg in the first place that they lost?
Well, I think it was this... The Borg were seen as this force of nature, where they came in, they were big, powerful, they wanted to do their thing, but there's no way to fight them. You cut off a bit of their ship and they repair it. You take out a whole ship and they send more. There's just no way to stand up to them unless you just wipe them completely out. And that's impossible. Yeah,
it's different than a giant army.
Yeah.
Because they all really they all work as one. And, it's like a swarm of bees. And when you get into the whole insect thing, I do think that's where we have to address it, because I do think that to a point, you can argue for the Borg Queen by saying, well, every hive has a queen. Every hive has a leader. And so, how do you argue against that?
Because that's... I just don't think that they needed it in this... I mean, I think it's being too literal, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Where they had this great concept. If every hive needs a queen, then why didn't they introduce her in the first place?
I see.
So they had this great collective consciousness idea where there was no individuality. There was no face. And then all of a sudden they say, we called them a hive mind, so let's introduce a queen. That leaves us open. But I don't think it did.
Yeah.
I think they were just trying to put something extra in to make a movie work.
Well, and you notice the Borg did evolve over time.
Sure, they were going after
and that's okay.
People also, as opposed to just technology.
Which you didn't get in Q-Who.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, I did too. And I didn't feel like that was retcon material. I felt like that was just something we didn't know about them.
Yeah.
Potentially, okay? It's certainly less weird than it's suddenly introducing this singular consciousness that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? As they evolved, we discovered new things about them, and then you end up with inconsistencies by the time you get the Borg Queen, and then you get into Voyager. Because they made a really big deal out of how the Borg didn't understand a singular consciousness. They didn't, or they were a singular. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. Of how they didn't understand individuality.
But if they have a Borg queen, they must.
They must. So then you end up with issues with, well, how is it that introducing Q back into the collective messed them up?
Yeah, and why did they need Locutus in the first place?
Why did they need Locutus?
Because they could use the Borg queen as the face of the Borg.
Yeah, or anyone. And then you get into Scorpion, and it seems like they're trying to go back to what they did in Best of Both Worlds, with 7 of 9 being kind of Janeway's Locutus. You know, we need, the Borg needs someone to speak for the Borg because they're used to, it's kind of accommodating the people they're going after so that they can better understand that they're going to get assimilated. It's very interesting, but I like it. I really like it. It's like, you know, we're gonna have this face because it's almost like thinking that you're smarter and talking down to someone. You know what I mean? Because like, well, they don't understand us when there's a bunch of us, so we'll give them one. They can handle that. Yeah, they're used to that.
Yeah. So.
Did you like the Borg as a villain in Voyager? The idea of using them over and over again, was that a problem for you?
I did, because
a lot of people didn't.
Well, I think by the end of it, you look back and you see what happened to them, and you can say, in hindsight, well, I think they were overused. I don't think they did right by them. I think they kind of became a wussy race because Janeway beat them all the time.
Right.
Whatever you want to say.
They were too easy to beat in a fight after a while.
Yeah, but the Borg, they're this big, powerful enemy. They're from the Delta Quadrant. It gives us a great opportunity to go and this race is already established. So, of course, Janeway's going to go through their space. What's she going to do when she comes up against the Borg?
It's going to make it a lot harder.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before, but it should have been harder
than
it was
been much
with
harder.
the Borg around.
But the whole show of Voyager should have been a little bit more difficult for the lost ship in the Delta Quadrant. It's just kind of, oh, hey, we're just like TNG, only in a different area of space.
So, ultimately, I think where I'm going to come down on is the Borg Queen just messed with what made them scary. And it potentially, I can't think of how, maybe it could have been done in a way where it didn't mess with that, especially if she was just really mysterious and we didn't understand very much about her. If maybe she didn't run the whole collective, but maybe different patches of the collective had their own queens and weird stuff like that. I don't know how exactly it would work. Or if we'd seen her one time and then she faded into the background and then we never saw her again.
Maybe she didn't show up as often, or maybe she was talked about, or something where she was in the background, but she didn't, because in Voyager it seemed like she was controlling every single ship.
That's right.
And we kept running into her. Why was she everywhere?
Yeah, she was everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Do you think the Borg Queen was a good idea, a bad idea, and how do you feel about the Borg on the whole? Leave us a comment, let us know. And if you have an idea for an episode we might do later on, or an episode that we might review, an episode of Star Trek we might review, let us know about that also.
The best is yet to come.
The Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm
The
Sarah.
best is yet to come.